See if it pops up on my end.
Well, looks like we're probably at least 35 seconds ahead of everyone.
I mean, that's fine. There we go.
Alrighty, so we'll wait a minute for people to trickle in. And then we'll do our usual sound tests just to make sure everyone can hear us, and hopefully this won't turn into a boomer stream in the next few minutes. Cool. So they can already hear us both. Hopefully internet lasts this time. The last time we did this, we had no connection issues the whole time, which was awesome. So
Let's not jinx it.
yeah. In 3 minutes it'll probably have buffering issues and then disconnect again, but hopefully not.
Let's see.
So yeah, 6 people in. I'll wait till there's like 10 people, and then I guess we'll start.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Just waiting for some people to filter in, and then we'll start. Guess we're doing something a little bit different today.
Yeah, I think might be interesting. Actually, let me tag.
We haven't really done anything like this in like well over a year.
In what way you mean?
Like kind of flesh out stuff in Hyrule Conquest. I think the last big thing we did was the Diakolan language, which was well over a year ago. I got so caught up in
Has it really been that long?
Yeah, it's been over a year since the last time we tried to flesh things out.
Jesus Christ.
Yep, because I got so caught up in the making the cinematic for that last mission, and then I did the Moblins and the Dark Nuts, and then Exo and I did the first mission again, and then I redid that cinematic, and then I just got caught up in the Deku Scrubs and the Lizzlefoss, and then Labyrinth and the Fairy, so haven't really gone on Discord and tried to flesh things out. I've been kind of going crazy these last few weeks over that. Okay, we have well over 10 viewers, so I guess we'll start now. Anyway, just really quick, can you guys hear both of us before we continue?
Poodles in chat.
Poodles and toodles. We're like, I think a minute ahead of them, so it'll probably be a little bit before they respond.
Yeah, that's fine.
Still waiting for the yeah, I really want to put the Stalfos in, but right now I am redoing the Hylians. I just finished redoing some of the Hylian buildings. Well, all of the ones that I intended to redo. If you're on the patron Discord, you've probably seen them, but the next thing you guys will see is the Hylians all polished up and redone. And Exodarian is pretty much, it looks like he's done with his AI for the Gerudo. He's been showing videos of his AI stomping the 0 AD AI. Okay, now they say they can hear us. Yeah, we're really far ahead of him, but I don't really mind if we're like a minute or two ahead of the chat.
No, I think it's fine.
This probably won't be a Q&A stream, although it might turn into one if we burn out.
Yeah, I mean, if I'll do like we usually do. Like if I see something interesting, questions that are relevant in the chat, I'll try to answer it or bring it up.
Yeah, Danielle Mazzella is asking about the next cinematic. It's gonna be a while. I know, I'm really sad. Like 2 or 3 days ago, I was depressed for like, I was just sitting here depressed for an hour because I realized it's gonna be, I don't even know if I'm gonna finish the whole thing in my lifetime, because as we're about to talk about, I probably gave myself 10 more years of work to do. So I had like a minor fit of depression at the realization that everything I had planned, I probably won't finish before I die. It's just so much.
I actually don't think it'll take that long.
The cinematics will.
Yeah, the cinematics definitely will.
I'm certain I'll get all the factions and everything in the game and all that stuff done, but the cinematics, I am going to be spending years on all of them. If I, like, say I started a cinematic tomorrow and I did nothing but cinematics until they were all done, it's like years of work. because each one takes me like 2 to 3 months to do.
Yeah, I
They're
know.
really draining.
Well,
I'm,
there
I'm,
is a way.
I'm always like, every time I finish one, I'm so wiped out. I'm like burned out for a week, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the next one.
I mean, there is a way, but you're not gonna like it. That's hard capping
What about hard capping?
yourself
Oh,
on the length of them.
yeah.
That's like the only solution.
I need to be like no longer than 15 minutes.
I
um,
mean, the thing is that now though, after the mission, you can actually, you can actually have a lot of dialogue
in the
in the
mission
mission
itself
itself.
now, yeah. I've definitely taken that into account. Like, okay, I guess this kind of segues into what the stream is about. So, a little bit of background about, not backstory. About 2 weeks ago, I was going, because basically I have like rough drafts of all the campaigns and stuff for Hyrule Conquest. A rough draft of the storyline, or what I call the skeleton. And every now and again, when I have a moment, I'll go through and I'll go over the dialogue and I'll rewrite it and I'll try and make it better, whatever. And about 2 weeks ago, I was doing that for the Labyrinth campaign, and somehow I just ended up going through all the different campaigns. I wasn't just doing the Labyrinth one. I was cleaning up dialogue all over the place. I was even going back into Gerudo Wars and redoing stuff. And then somehow I got it into my head where I basically scrapped the entire second half of my plans for Hyrule Conquest. I just completely scrapped it. I'm like, you know what? There should be a second Hylian Civil War. So I basically scrapped about 10 years of work. I just threw it in the garbage and I restarted from scratch. And then I mentioned it on the Discord, and I think people had a little bit of a meltdown at some of the ideas I had. So,
The thing is, that is important to keep in mind again, is that everything that isn't in the actual game, obviously there will be changes, but like most of the stuff that is mentioned in like Discord or wherever, it's not set in stone, right? So don't always have a panic fit.
even stuff set in stone might change. Like all the Gerudo
Yeah.
Wars is getting. Whenever I get a chance to go back to the Gerudo Wars and redo it, it's gonna be like 10 times as long.
Well, to be fair though, I think the Gerudo Wars is kind of understandable because, as you said in the past, that you kind of rushed it. So
Yeah.
I think that is a legitimate like reason to kind of change a lot of stuff there, or add stuff. I should rather say add stuff is a better way to do it, because it is way too short for what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, the Gerudo Wars, I basically rushed through it at the time. Though, is at a really hectic point of my life.
Yeah, I mean, and
It really
that's
looked
fine.
like I wouldn't even be able to keep working on it back. I think that was in 2014. That was
Yeah.
like 6 years ago. Yeah, that year it was really looking like I wouldn't even be able to work on it anymore. But then someone suggested Patreon, and at first I'm like, I don't even know if I want to go on Patreon, because that might open up the risk of me getting shut down. But here we are 6 years later, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think I mean, the true shame of the Grid Wars, and obviously it's understandable why it was rushed, is that it's probably one of the most important arcs, if not the most important arc.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know
there's a
people
lot.
disagree with me, but I would actually say the Fallen Sage is kind of important because it really
Oh yeah,
introduces Link and Zelda, or Tetra more specifically.
I agree that the Fallen Stage is very important, but so like the Grid Wars it sets the stage for a lot of things, a lot of plot lines.
Yeah, the Gerudo Wars is like Robert's Rebellion in Game of Thrones, I guess.
Yeah, like it's a very major event in the story that there's a lot of things did happen, and
Pretty
obviously
much, yeah, everything leads to the Gerudo Wars, and then everything comes from it. It's kind of like the nexus of everything.
yeah,
Like, again, if you don't look at time as like a linear kind of line, if you look at time as cyclical, yeah, the Gerudo Wars is like the nexus, or the core, where everything goes out into the past and the future.
yeah. Because there's a lot of things that, you know, you could. There's a lot of things that went down there. Just, and honestly, it's kind of off screen now, which is a shame.
Not, it won't be for forever, assuming I live long
Yeah,
enough.
you have to find a way to extend your natural lifespan so you can finish Iral Conquest and work on Sigma.
Well, as someone joked, I think the last time we did a live stream, if I managed to clone myself, it wouldn't speed up my work. I would just end up adding more work for me to do.
Probably, yeah.
And that would probably happen if I became biologically immortal. I wouldn't have unlimited time to finish what I had planned. I would just keep doing more and more and more for all eternity. I would like create hell for myself on Earth. Just a very, very quick tangent, though, I guess, before we really begin. I recently read through the Nintendo Valiant comics for the Zelda comics. They're really great.
They're really good.
That's without a doubt the best version of Princess Zelda I've ever seen in anything.
Yeah,
Her body count is like in the hundreds. It's amazing.
It's a very good.
And
It's very underrated.
there's one issue where she stirs up an angry mob of civilians to go destroy Ganon, and she's like going full on warlord. I'm like, that's my Nylon.
Yeah.
It's so great.
The comics are really great and very underrated. So, you know, if you're a Zelda fan, I really recommend. I actually haven't read them in a long time, but I really do recommend reading them because it's some of the best Zelda content out there. And most Zelda fans, especially modern ones, they have no idea that they exist.
Yeah. They're way better than the cartoon, and I'm one of those weird people that actually think the cartoon isn't that bad. I mean, the cartoon's kind of goofy, but it's no more goofy than some of the canon stuff now.
I mean, it's a product of its time,
It is.
really.
But the Valiant comics are way better than even the cartoon. I mean, there's some silly stuff in them, obviously, but the one thing I really like about the Valiant comics is just how mean everyone is to Link. Everyone's constantly punching him or slapping him. It's hilarious. His father freaking punches him in the face, and then the captain of the Hylian Knights just is constantly slapping him like, stop being a coward, Link, and get out there. It's so great. I love it. Sadly, I was actually considering buying some of the issues, but they're all like hundreds of dollars. But
Yeah.
they're free to read online. I think the website I found them on was called Raru's Return or something. So anyone in the chat, I highly recommend looking up the Valiant Zelda comics. They're really good. Although I was a little bit depressed when I finished them because I found out the guy who wrote them actually committed suicide in a very kind of gruesome and exaggerated way. He jumped off of a 45-story building, like inside this like 45-story hotel in New York, and he landed on an all-you-can-eat buffet. That's just that's kind of insane. Because I was reading through the comics and I'm like, these are like really great ideas. I'd like to somehow contact the writer of them. And I looked him up, and I guess he's been dead for 25 years. He offed himself, but I don't know. I still recommend reading the Valiant comics. They're really great.
Yeah, really good. I do wish that they did get more exposure. A lot of the earlier Zelda stuff is really good in general. It's just that I don't know. It doesn't get that much attention anymore, which is a shame because there's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, just not the comics and everything, but just the artwork that even the Japanese designers did. Like, or I should say, concept artists from back then is some of the best art Zelda's ever had, and most people have never seen it, which is a big shame.
Yeah, I think the art in the comics is pretty great. I mean, I don't like some of the outfit designs, but like the actual quality of the art is really good in the Valiant comics. And
again, the art is very much a product of its time. It's good art, but it's very
just actually just to point out just to make a point. One of the stories of the Valiant comics is a queen from Link's homeland comes to Hyrule, and basically it doesn't explicitly say it, but it heavily implies that Princess Zelda is a bastard child between this this affair that this queen from another nation had with her father. It's so great. And it's really funny because, as we'll discuss soon, in Hyrule Conquest, we decided that Tetra is actually a bastard. So that was weird timing.
The technique, funny coincidence, I guess. I mean, that's actually something that you can segue into it. Like, if you kind of have, I guess you kind of have to have a rough idea of Hylian law, how it works.
Yeah,
Like
I guess I guess
laws.
I guess to everyone in the chat, we're basically going to live on the internet kind of flesh out the second Hylian Civil War, or it's technically a war of secession, which I guess is a form of civil war, but in the original Nephy canon, before 2 weeks ago, basically after the whole Labyrinth conflict, Princess Zelda returned to Hyrule, and there's kind of this conflict between her and Hylia over the throne. And originally it was just kind of them butting heads, but 2 weeks ago I'm like, nah, scrap that. There's gonna be a full-blown war of succession, however the hell it's pronounced. A war for the throne, and all of these different potential monarchs are gonna be fighting over the Hylian throne. So we went back and looked through some of the bloodlines, and we're like, okay, who can fight Tetra and Hylia over the throne? And I found a way to slip Akazu in there, through a bunch of legal loopholes, which is something he would do.
Sleazy.
I finally gave in and I dug up King Tuft. I finally gave in. I'm like, fine, I'll go to the poison well that is Triforce Heroes. We dug up King Tuft, and Sir Volga will also be fighting over the Hylian throne. So we got Tetra, Hylia, Akazu, King Tuft. I guess he'd technically be Prince Tuft at this point, and Volga. They're all going to be fighting over the Hylian throne. A big 5-way war with Ganondorf's going to be involved. It's a mess right now. We need to clean it all up.
I mean, have you given thought to the timeline of events after the Labyrinth arc?
Yes. Really quickly, I'm going to answer one question in the chat though. Nicola Didic, I'm actually not sure if this question is in reference to me or the guy who wrote the Zelda comics, but they ask, I hate to ask, but did he finish the story? If you're referring to the man who wrote the Valiant comics, his name is, I think it's George Kagani? I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. It sounds Italian to me, but they did actually finish it. In fact, the last issue of the Valiant comics ends in a really awesome way. Basically, Link and Zelda finally start courting each other. They go on to a date to some opera, and Link falls asleep at the opera, and she's like, okay, well, let's do something that you'd find fun. So basically, the Zelda Valiant comics ends with Link taking Princess Zelda to a bar, and it ends with them getting into this giant bar brawl. It's like the perfect ending. I love it so much. So yes, at least they were able to end the Valiant comics on a pretty positive note. But yeah, I felt like answering that question. I wish there was more issues. I think there's seven issues, and there's 2 different stories in each issue, so it's like there's 14 different stories. Actually, no, the 7th issue is just one big long story. So there's 13 stories in total, I think. Some of them are better than others. Like the first one's pretty lame. If I remember right, the first story is just Link sitting around Hyrule Castle or the North Palace or whatever, doing nothing, and it's kind of boring actually. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, I guess.
Timeline.
Yeah. So I have so many documents open, I'm not even sure which one to click on. But basically, just a warning to everyone. There's going to be tons and tons of spoilers, although in 5 years I'll probably retcon everything, so none of these spoilers will matter. So basically, there is a conflict with Labrina, and Princess Zelda gets involved with that. She basically leads a big mob of Ordanian peasants into Labrina. Labrina collapses, and she's there for several years on adventures with Link and company, and they go do a bunch of crazy stuff with the fairies. They get caught up in a Lizzlefoss plot. So Princess Zelda is away from Hyrule for like 2 years, and this is obviously really bad optics for a monarch to be. So she returns to Hyrule. Her father is very, very sick, and he's about to die. And at the end of the Fallen Sage storyline, she kind of promised Hylia that the throne would be Hylia's after her father passed away.
Yeah.
So Daddy Daphne's dies. Princess Zelda inherits the throne, and then Hylia naturally comes to claim the throne. This was more or less what was originally going to happen before I changed my mind on everything, but it's not just Hylia that comes after the throne. Lord Akazu seems to be hanging out and around everywhere, and he comes to claim the throne through some legal trickery. He basically finds a way to prove that Tetra is actually a bastard and does not have a legal claim to the throne. And he uses his political marriage to Agatha to kind of reinforce his position too, because Agatha actually has royal ties, which leads to Tuft and Styla, who are descended from the sister of the first Princess Zelda, who was supposed to get the throne, but the first prince... Was it the first Princess Zelda or her mother? I'm already forgetting.
Yeah. So
you actually know this part better than I do.
Yeah. So that would be Nyland's father's sister.
Okay.
So Nyland's aunt.
So Rome's sister was supposed to get the throne, and then Rome got it.
Yeah, because they're matrilineal, and she was the one supposed to inherit the throne. For whatever reason, she was the throne passed to her brother. Probably because, we can always flesh that out later, but, for now, I would say maybe she was unfair and, in some way.
We already know that Impa was probably involved in some way with the transfer of power. Which, spoilers, Impa poisoned Daddy Daphne's to get rid of him. Spoilers, everyone.
And I mean, so throne goes to Nyland's father, Rome, still Rome. And he eventually dies, as you guys remember, during the events of the Rise of Ganon. And then there's a question that if Nyland should inherit the throne, or if the throne should pass back to her cousins to keep, so that the inheritance, the laws of succession aren't, broken.
I'm going to say that her aunt probably just fled Hyrule when Ganon invaded. They were so cowardly they didn't even bother defending. They just fled to the north probably, and that's how they got their ties to Arcadia, maybe.
Yeah. And obviously, regardless, even if there was a question of they should, if the throne should pass back to them, due to Nyland's role in Ganon's, the rise of Ganon, obviously she would naturally become the leader anyways, because she functionally was.
Yeah. Symbolically,
nobles, yeah. Very few. I can imagine very few nobles would vouch for anyone else, because it would kind of weaken their position. You don't say, yeah, great job, by the way, but you're not really the legitimate heir. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's how Tuft and Styla are asserting their claim to the throne. They basically are directly descended to the sister of the first Princess Zelda's father, who was supposed to get the throne, but Princess Zelda's father got the throne instead. And then I am going to... I mean, I guess we can change this if we come up with a better idea, but Rome's sister basically fled from Hyrule when Ganon invaded, and that's why she didn't take the throne after Rome died. They fled like a bunch of filthy cowards into the north, and then Nyland's like, no, I'm taking over now, I'm gonna kill Ganon, and Hyrule's mine. which is probably what Impa wanted. Um, so yeah, Tuft and Styla are going. Well, Tuft initially, and then he gets killed, and then Styla tries to take the throne from Akazu and Tetra and Hylia, and then there is a fifth contender for the throne, who is the Volga. He is. I'm pretty sure we decided that he's going to be the brother of King Tuft.
Yeah, the younger brother.
Yeah, the younger brother of King Tuft, and he actually has no interest in the throne himself. Like he's not motivated to actually take it for himself. He just fucking hates his brother and thinks he'd be a terrible ruler. In fact, initially he's going to ally himself with Tetra because he's like, no, Tetra's the legal heir to the throne, not Tuft. And then he finds out Tetra's a bastard, and he's like, oh, I guess she doesn't have a legal claim to the throne. Well, I hate my brother, but my brother does have a legitimate claim, so I guess I will kill him and I will take the throne because I'm the next one with the legitimate claim. And his daughter is a filthy half-breed, so she has no legitimate claim, so... so that's
He's
how...
a very,
Huh?
very by the rules kind of person.
Yes.
By the book.
So Volga is the fifth contender for the Hylian throne, and that's how he is involved.
He's not a merry man.
He's not a merry man. No. Yeah, Volga went from a very non-character to a character. Like a bunch of non-characters became fleshed out characters in like the span of 2 days. Like Styla went from just a joke reference to like a major antagonist in 10 seconds. It just like all sparked in my head in like just like the span of 10 seconds. It's just like she's this joke cameo I have. Like, oh, now she's like a major antagonist to Princess Zelda and Link, huh? I don't know how that happened.
As I said the other day, just from what we discussed regarding her, she's a very good character just already.
Yeah, I don't want to kill her now because she's kind of a very tragic character.
I actually kind of like her more than Tetra in a way, which is kind of, I mean, that's good though. Like, that's the thing. If you have to, like, if you're in that position where you actually really sympathize with the antagonist and start to question the protagonist, I think that's good storytelling because that's usually how it goes. And
I guess that's a little bit harder with Akazu.
Yeah.
He's kind of devolved to the point where like it's kind of hard to like him.
I mean, you can enjoy him as a villain, I guess.
Yeah, as a villain, I guess, but it's kind of hard to. Well, I mean, I guess you can sympathize with him a little bit because he was wrongfully kicked out of a marriage. His marriage was annulled, so I guess you can kind of sympathize with him there.
I mean, he got fucked over. I mean,
yeah. Just for the people in the chat, this is kind of a retcon. Well, who am I kidding? I guess it's a retcon, but basically, the fourth Princess Zelda was in Nephy canon as it's out in the open now. The fourth Princess Zelda marries Kazakh. But she was originally supposed to marry Akazu. Her mother basically arranged a marriage between Akazu and her. And then,
she died.
Yeah. But basically that's what caused the hostility between Akazu and Kazakh was, he was supposed to marry her. But I think we ended up deciding that Akazu actually did marry her. They had their marriage, but, they didn't consummate their marriage yet, and then her mother died, and then she's like, I'm annulling this marriage because my mother's dead, and I'm gonna marry Daddy Daphne's instead. So Akazu was legally married to the fourth Princess Zelda, but because of the Gerudo Wars, they didn't get to consummate their marriage, and then her mother died. What?
There's something to keep in mind, actually, because, they were like best buddies, war buddies, right?
Yes.
And Kazakh did have a chance to reject the offer, but he didn't.
Yeah, he took it. He wanted that sweet, sweet throne.
Yeah, he can. I mean, he did actually have a chance. I think that's because I really like Kazakh, and I think he's one of the very decent people in Hyrule Conquest.
He
I
really
think,
is like a Chad. He's like the Chad of Hyrule Conquest.
but regardless of interpretation, that's very scummy to do.
Yeah, it was a very douchebag thing of him to do. He could have kept to his honor and been like, "No, you're married to Akazu. You shouldn't annul this marriage." I guess in his mind, he was just like, "Well, she really doesn't. She's not really interested in him. I could take the throne and do some good. I guess I'll go through with this." He probably tried to justify it in his head. He probably wasn't like, "Yeah, screw my buddy Akazu. The throne's mine." It probably wasn't like a situation like that. But
Yeah, yeah. I actually don't. I don't think he intentionally went out to screw over his friend, right? It's more that he didn't realize that he was being an asshole, right?
yeah,
It's
like a jock basically.
yeah, yeah. Like he probably, yeah, like you said, he rationalized in his head, but obviously it's still a scummy thing. And I imagine that a lot of, if a friend did that to you, you would be pretty upset, right?
Oh yeah. I'd be pretty upset. Although, unlike Akazu, I probably would have gotten over it. Like, isn't it like 20 years after?
Yeah.
25 years? And Akazu, he has a lot of political power, even though his marriage was annulled and he didn't become the king. So he could have easily married another noble, like just from his political power alone. It's not like
Yeah.
he's not like Mido where he's like an incel that everyone hates. He actually has political power. He's not like he has military skill. He's capable. Yeah, he's not like an incel. He just is. He's so bitter over this failed marriage of his that he just can't let it go, and it ends up destroying him.
I think it's
I guess like Robert Baratheon, he's like obsessed with Lyanna.
I think it kind of adds to the dialogue in where he, kind of taunts Araya about the joke she's become, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems like he was really kind of obsessed with not necessarily Araya as a person, but the idea,
Yeah.
right? And
yeah,
obviously,
exactly.
Yeah, he was
But it's a
obsessed
little
with the
meta
idea.
there, actually.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It kind of fits the character, and it's also quite meta in terms of what it kind of represents, because he was so
Nephy misses
kinda,
the idea of Zelda.
yeah,
It's so meta.
because it's very obvious that he had tremendous respect for Marala, right?
Yeah.
And that's the idea of Zelda that he really respected.
Honestly,
And
if because there was no king on the throne at that time because Aghanim had been deposed or whatever, but honestly, if Marala had asked him to marry her, he'd probably marry Marala before her daughter. He loved
actually,
her mother, not in necessarily a romantic way, just like in I guess romantic in the medieval sense of the word, like a knight, like a chivalrous kind of love.
yeah,
Um, so he probably would have married Marala if Marala was like, yeah, Aghanim's gone. Like if Ganondorf hadn't killed her and she had proposed to for him to take Aghanim's place, he probably would have said yes, and that would have
honestly, I
been
think
awkward. But for her daughter,
I can kind of see initially before he became very bitter, the idea of like marrying Araya would be his way to further Morales' legacy, right?
yes,
Which was robbed from him because he could, continue to protect the legacy of the person that he really respected, and that was robbed from him.
I'm gonna guess he's
And,
probably also mad that Kazak only ever had one child.
yeah,
For such a Chad, he only ever had one kid,
and
who he ended up stabbing to death.
Yeah, and as someone said in the chat, like obviously this doesn't justify him becoming like a crazy necromancer or anything, but it doesn't justify it, but it does give a reason to kind of why he was pushed towards that path, right?
It's kind of funny that you mentioned he was obsessed with the idea of the fourth Princess Zelda, and he's also connected to necromancy. There's a symbolic connection there, unintentional, but not surprising. Yeah.
I do think it really adds to him. It's not really. He's not really. He doesn't really have. He doesn't really hate Araya, but more what the idea that she's kind of a corruption of the idea of Morala.
Yes, which sometimes
Which
happens
is
with children.
yeah, it does. I mean, you could argue that Morala is a corruption of her ancestors, right?
I'd say she's a
And so on and
corruption
so
of the second Princess Zelda, but she's closer to a return to the first.
yeah, I always had my interpretation of Morala specifically is that she had a very hard time because she had to kind of live in the shadow of her grandmother, which was a very strong warrior woman, right? And then her mother, which was a gentle, good politician, and she had to balance those two, which is I can imagine would be very difficult, right?
Yes, I
Uh,
almost imagine Morala as she's not very politically smart at all.
yeah,
She's kind of
but it's something
she
it's something she strived to be, maybe, right? Like she wasn't good at it, but it's something she really
I
wanted
see
to do.
her she's the warrior king basically.
Yeah,
Well, no, even in wartime, she makes a lot of very bad decisions during the Gerudo Wars, including
yeah,
her attire.
that's what I mean. Like she's not. She tries to be her mom and her mother and grandmother, and she fails at both,
Yeah,
which is
she
kind of
honestly
sad.
probably should never have been on the throne. I mean, she didn't have any siblings, but she wasn't a very she was. I don't think in my mind she was not a good ruler. She was not politically smart. She didn't. She wasn't. She she had skill swinging swords around, but she didn't have skill like leading armies. She was kind of
Yeah,
just a pure soldier in that regard, I guess. Not necessarily a general or a politician. Which I guess it was probably. Oh yeah, it was. Going back to the Akazu being in love with an idea that's dead, and then also being connected to necromancy. His claim to the throne is also he's trying to dig up the past too to use that against the future. It's funny how that just happens.
yeah. It's like I actually feel really. I kind of feel bad for Morala, even though she did a lot of like she did. You know, she made a lot of stupid choices, right? But I can
Yeah, I mean
imagine that it must
even
have
the
been very
person she married, although she was kind of deceived on that, I guess. So
yeah. But I mean,
she
like
made so
just the
many
fact
bad
that
decisions in her lifetime.
she like she had to live up to her Nihilin and you know Yanera, right? It's like it's not. It must have been really. It must have sucked to be the successor to those two.
Yeah. Impa was probably horribly disappointed in Morala now that I think about it.
Yeah,
So the fourth Princess Zelda was probably like a relief, like, oh good, she's got Sheikah blood,
yeah,
which Impa orchestrated anyway, but she's like, okay, she's got Sheikah blood, she's committing herself to the cadre to some degree, so she'll be a much better ward of Hyrule than her mother, and that obviously didn't work out for Impa, so she gets rid of her
honestly,
too.
Impa should have seen the wolf on the hill when she did actually marry Kazak. That's
The
like
wolf
a
on
good.
the hill.
Yeah, like that's.
Yeah, Impa
It's
was
not a
aware
very.
of Link at that time.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
the thing is, Impa does eventually realize her mistakes with Zelda's line, which is why the second civil war happens. That she is trying to put the Stylas in power.
yeah,
Obviously, I mean, if you're listening to this live stream, which I said spoilers, you already know Impa's behind it. But if you're playing this game without listening to this as a player, you won't be aware of Impa's connection to Styla and her father, and the fact that she's trying to get rid of the Nohansons because they've turned out to be a century-long disaster. they were
pretty much.
because basically, okay, further back into the backstory, Hyrule kind of had what's considered a golden age right before Ganon came in and invaded. And Impa kind of saw that as a weakness. she didn't like that the Romes were in power, so she basically orchestrated the invasion with Ganon. Um, and then Ganon invaded Hyrule, wiped out the Romes, which was incredibly reckless on Impa's part because Ganon almost killed Nylon, but I guess that's why Impa was waiting to save her. So
Yeah.
Impa basically is like, I don't like the Romes. I'm going to get rid of the Romes, and I'm going to put the Nohansons in power. This Princess Nylon Zelda is looking promising, so I'm going to put her in power. I'm going to groom her to be this Iron Warrior Queen, whatever, and then I'll work with her line of descendants and get rid of the Romes. So she orchestrates this invasion with Ganon. Not only that, but she also orchestrates the invasion with Ganon to expose Bongo, who is one of her political enemies. Which ends up working, so she's able to root out Bongo and all of her traitorous Sheikah swine. So yeah, Impa's basically Littlefinger, I guess.
Scheming.
Impa's
I mean,
monstrously badass in a very fucked up sort of way.
I mean, did you entertain the thought that when the question came up, back when the Rome's fled, right? And Seal was dead, who should the throne go back to? Should it go back to the Romes, even though they're gone? It's rightfully theirs. Should it go to Nylon? And I remember we did entertain the thought that Rauru actually wanted it to go to the Romes, but
Really?
Impa was the one that kind of influenced that, vouched against that. And it kind of ironic in a way, right? Because
yeah, if you know anything about Rauru and Impa.
Because I can imagine that he was like, it should go to them because they're the rightful heirs. That
Impa just gives him a look.
Yeah, it was like, no.
She doesn't even just say anything. She just stares with her blindfold at Rauru, and he's like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, in her mind, he turned out to be right.
Yeah, Rauru was right. Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Is basically Impa. She put Princess Zelda's line in power, and after a century of them being in power, it's been a nonstop disaster. So she's like, I made a mistake. I'm going to put the Romes back in power. I'm going to find the current descendant from that line, which is Princess Styla's father. I'm going to secretly back him up. I'm going to find him allies to make alliances with. I'm going to poison Daddy Daphne's. I'm going to use the animosity between Tetra and Hylia. And I'm going to orchestrate a giant civil war, and hopefully King Tuft will not be an idiot and get himself killed, which he does.
Yeah, King Tuft is an idiot. He's an actual...
Yeah.
I imagine out of those three brothers, he was really the dumbest one.
Impa's probably more interested in his daughter at that point then, but she realizes he obviously has the stronger claim because she's still not.
As we talked about, right?
Huh?
That would make sense because as we talked about, that would make sense because Styla, is a good person. Like she's an actual capable good person, right? So that would make sense.
Yeah, I think she's gonna be probably incredibly arrogant, but a lot of the characters are arrogant in Nephy canon, including Link. Link's arrogance gets someone killed.
But I mean, like, I think that she would put she would she would support Tuft, but she's really putting her eggs in the Styla basket.
Yep.
I mean, it's the kind of irony though, due to her blood, because Hyrule was too dumb, which is makes sense to see past something super kind of superfluous, right?
Yes.
They were robbed of a potential very, very good monarch because they were not able to see past something silly.
Well, I guess spoiler is Styla's only half Hylian. We noticed in the artwork, for some reason, Nintendo gave her round ears and not pointed ears, so we're like, oh crap, she wouldn't have a legal claim to the throne because she's not a Hylian. What the hell do we do? And we came up with the idea that You don't see her father's ears in Triforce Heroes because his hair is crazy. So I'm like, okay, he's a Hylian. So we'll have it that Styla, her mother, Styla, is it Styla or Styla? I think it's Styla, whatever. Styla's mother was actually an Ordanian, which is why her ears are round. So her bloodline has actually been corrupted. So she hides her ears basically, and hides the fact that her bloodline is corrupted. And that's what ends up backfiring on Styla and losing her the throne, is because her bloodline is exposed. And then she's put through a walk of shame and she loses the throne and she probably dies horribly of infection in a ditch. I don't want to kill her now, but...
Hylian peasants don't want any goddamn Ordanian.
Filthy Ordanian scum. Get back into the south.
I mean, which is funny because, you know, if they weren't being stupid, he might have gotten a really good monarch.
Yep.
Which is the... You know,
so,
some people, you know, I'm sure some people will chastise me for saying this, but a lot of, you know, peasants didn't really understand the intrigue with power play, and they kind of would side against whoever. And you see it constantly where peasants and common, you know, turn against whoever if the situation called for it.
And this happens in Nephy canon too, like the you know, Akazu, he tries to claim the throne through a bunch of, you know, legalese that the peasants don't understand what the hell he's saying. He's only shouting out that nonsense, you know, for the sake of nobles and the people who do understand the law. He knows that it'll just give people an excuse to turn against Tetra, who they're angry at because she ran off to fight some war with Ordanians down in Labyrinth for 2 years. She disappeared while her father was sick and the kingdom was falling apart. And on top of that, our internet connection seems to be failing, so we might cut out here soon. Oh no, it's yeah, I'll just keep going. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying. Sorry, it gave me a warning that we're gonna get disconnected, but
Tetra.
What was I saying about Tetra?
But the fact that, you know, she was off.
Oh yeah, right. What? Yeah, the peasants have okay, so Akazu knows that the peasants don't give a crap about, you know, the legal since he's spouting out because they don't understand it. He just knows it'll give them yet another reason to side with him because, yeah, Tetra has bad optics for running off for 2 years fighting this war in Labyrinth. And on top of that, she sold the throne to Hylia, who's like a foreign deity that no one knows anything about.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm pretty sure YouTube is about to die on us again. So, everyone in the chat, toodles if you can, or poodles if you can still hear us, or if YouTube actually is screwing up. I made it 47 minutes before we had issues, which is pretty good, honestly, but I was hoping it'd last the whole time. I'm not seeing any toodles. We must be really far ahead of the chat.
Yeah.
Safe. Although according to YouTube and according to OBS, we're only a few seconds ahead. Huh?
Yeah, they can hear us. They can hear us. So I think we should just keep going before we lose our train of thought.
They can hear us?
Yeah.
I think. Oh no, yeah, I'm seeing it all coming in. That it came up on your screen before me. I think I am behind everyone. Okay, anyway. Okay, so yeah, we talked about okay, yeah, we were talking about peasants and them switching sides when they had excuses too. Okay, yeah. That happens in Nephy canon. They don't understand anything Akazu's saying. They just have yet another excuse to turn against Tetra, and all they hear him say is she's a bastard, and like, oh, she's a bastard, and she sold out the kingdom to a foreign god. That's more than enough reason to turn on her.
And the funny thing, traditionally, due to, you know, bastardy being created as, you know, by a union of lust and weakness, right? Bastards have been traditionally seen as treacherous by nature.
Yeah.
And you can, like you said, she sold out the kingdom. They don't understand why she did, right? Because they don't have the context. All they know is that this treacherous bastard, illegitimate, you know, child, sold out the kingdom for some deity, which
Yep.
kind of supports their prejudice against bastards. And
Exactly.
I mean
Akazu
it
is
would
a
make
clever
sense.
man.
And honestly, it would make sense for Highlands to have, be prejudiced against bastards because they are a very pious culture,
Yeah.
and marriage would be sacred and they're very sacred in their culture. So it makes sense that they would be prejudiced.
Yeah, and that's actually how Tetra restores her claim to the throne by marrying the true legal heir to the throne, which is the descendant of King Gustav.
Boy in green.
The boy, yeah, Link for those. I mean, it's been revealed in the Fallen Sage, so I don't think that's spoilers that Link
No.
is a. I guess I'll go ahead and give backstory on that. So more spoilers. Basically, the first Hylian Civil War, King Gustav is assassinated, which is also gonna get portrayed when I redo the ancient mission. So King Gustav is assassinated, but his children are basically stolen away before they are assassinated, and they're taken to Galatia, which is this little tiny. The best way I could describe it is a micronation, which they're I discovered soon after, and I was reading more about it yesterday. But there is a micronation in Italy called San Marino, which in I think it was 360 AD, so more than 1500 years ago, a monk basically built this little monastery on this mountain in Italy, and for almost 1500 years, there's just been this little tiny city there with a very small population isolated from most of the world. I'm like, that's real world Galatia.
Pretty much, yeah.
So basically, Gustav's children are taken by a named character to Galatia, which Galatia is like this little monk's retreat, basically, at the time. And the Gustav family basically starts this tradition of controlling their bloodlines and kind of living in exile in Galatia for, I think it's 3,000 years almost in Nephy canon.
Yeah.
And they have this tradition of keeping the Gustav line going, and they have like this. It's almost like this pseudo religion they've created, where one day we'll take advantage of a political situation and put the Gustavs back on the throne. And this is where I was saying the other day, the reconciliation between Link and his father actually makes way more sense with a giant civil war than in the original plan. Because Link sees what's going on. He's like, you know what? This is like the perfect chance to like put the Gustav back on the throne. So I think I'm gonna do it, even though he doesn't want to at all. So Link is like, okay, I'm gonna marry a Nohansen. I'm gonna marry Princess Tetra Lena Zelda Nohansen, and I'm going to use my actual legal claim to the throne. It's gonna make her legal again too. It's gonna legitimize her, and they basically have like double claim to the throne.
And I mean, it's a very nice. There's a very nice symbolic gesture there by the fact that the Hansens, the perpetrators of of the downfall of the Gustavs, right? So now you're mending that original. Did I cut out?
Yeah, you cut out, but the YouTube is saying we're having tons of connection issues, and I see people saying there's buffering. So I'll wait a second and.
Yeah.
Hopefully, made it almost an hour with no issues, and now just suddenly tons of issues. This really sucks, but it says my connection's fine though everywhere else, so it might just be YouTube again. Although you cut out, so maybe it is my internet and not the connection. But poodles, everyone. Let us know if you can hear us. Yeah, hold your thought. Don't forget it. Like I forgot mine. I'm not seeing anyone responding in the chat.
Give it a second and see.
Okay, I see a Toodles. So okay, I think we're reconnected again. Just a heads up, my internet seems to be acting strange, so the whole stream might cut out. We might have to start a second one. I apologize in advance. I know that's inconvenient, but I can't control that. I'm gonna do a DSP here. What it is it is what it is. But
Okay,
okay,
so
it looks like everyone can hear us fine though now. So anyway,
my thought.
your thought.
Yeah, okay, so it's a very nice symbolic gesture with Link marrying Tetra because the Johansons were the original, perpetrators of the downfall of the House of Gustav, right? So
Yes.
there's a very nice mending of that original feud. Uh,
Yeah. In fact, did I send you the dialogue? Like I fixed the dialogue where Link reconciles with his father. Did I send that to
yeah,
you?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, at first he's even like, "You're not gonna marry that no Hansen bastard."
yeah. I mean, it would make sense for him to, fucking despise the Johansons because, considering what they did. It's
Yeah.
not only what they did, but especially if you consider, the ties that Roba and Gustav had with Balin, right? That makes it even a more transgression.
Yep.
Which is like I can imagine and honestly this is in pretty much in every medieval culture. You don't fuck with oaths, and there are three things: family, either be blood or foster relationships, friendship, and oaths. You don't fuck with those.
Yeah.
You just like it's I wouldn't say it's a sin, but it's a very 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 serious matter to
But
break
there
those, and
there's
you see it time.
also there's also a pattern of marrying enemies to end conflicts with an enemy.
Yeah, and another thing I was gonna say speaking of that, if Tuft was an actual idiot, right? I don't think I brought this up to you. I think I brought it up in with Looper and Coleman and Angel Falls. Is that if he wasn't an actual idiot and he was actually competent at what he was doing, you know what he should have done,
Married his
right?
daughter to Link.
Yes. Or
Yep.
or
Marry the
because
Styla.
or marry Styla or Styla's children to Tetra's children.
Yeah. That would have been the wisest thing for him to do. Stop the. Well, I mean, Tuft is dead before. I think Tuft is going to be dead before Link and Tetra
Yeah, yeah.
combine their houses. But if he
But
was alive, that would have been the smartest thing for him to do. Is like, okay, Link has the best claim. I'm gonna let him. I'm gonna purposely end war and be like, okay, if you have children, I'm gonna marry off Styla to your children, and then he'll have a connection to the throne again.
yeah, like
That would be the best thing for Tuff
if
to do.
there are two options, and he was aware, obviously, because he is still kin to House Hansen, right? They're still kin, and he would be aware of their existence. And if he wasn't stupid, he would try to arrange. He would con, Daphne. He would go on. He'd be like, "Yo, here's the thing. We still think we are the legitimate heir to the throne, and our house has a better, better legal claim and a better moral claim, right? But instead of rising up in rebellion, I have this arrangement that, when your daughter has children and my daughter has children, we will join our houses, right? If I wasn't in his position, that would be like my first, with those ambitions in mind.
Yeah. I'm seeing
But
some questions in the chat that I'll answer, but I'll let you finish your thought first.
yeah. But obviously he was an idiot. And I don't even think Link needs to be in the equation for that idea to pop up, because he has always been aware of the Johansons. He's always been aware that they are still, and he knows that because he has no sisters, right? So he is the heir, and he has no sisters, so he would be the de facto heir. But he has a daughter, and the most logical step would be to arrange a marriage. Like if Styla has a son. And have that son marry, Tetra's daughter, right? That would be the most logical way to resolve that.
The sad thing is, even if Tuff did all of that, it would backfire on him because Link and Tetra have no sons.
Yeah,
and he has no sons either. So even if he played his cards completely right and did the wisest and smartest thing, it still would have backfired on him anyway, because the Romes are cursed.
But that's the thing, like he didn't even entertain the thought, right?
No, he didn't.
it didn't even properly cross his mind. So,
He
which
probably
is why he's an idiot.
it's probably because in his heart he just wants some heads to roll as vengeance that his line got cut over for the Nohansons.
Yeah,
That's
that's
probably
why,
why. Which Styla doesn't have that probably because she's still pretty young. She probably doesn't feel that same hatred. I think she's probably been pampered and probably just thinks, oh yeah, I should, I'm so great. I should run Hyrule. And she's kind of she kind of gets killed because of her
I mean,
heritage. because
I
her
think,
father was an idiot and married an Ordanian.
it's really, that's actually kind of sad though, because that means the entire line of Rome actually ends there.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
end of
Well,
that.
no. Volga still is technically a Rome, but he
Yeah,
comes to
I
an
mean,
end too. So I guess he's
yeah,
the
that's
one it
what I
ends
mean.
with.
Yeah, I mean, so with those gone, that's an 5 generations of a great house of Hyrule
Yeah,
just gone.
all the Rome, yeah,
3,000
all the
years
Romes.
old.
I mean, technically, there's Romes in Princess Zelda because
Yeah,
the first Princess Zelda's father was a Rome, so there still is Romian blood
but the
in.
name
But the name
is
is gone. Yeah, the name's completely gone after Volga and Styla are dead.
And
The Rome
it's
curse is
like,
broken.
and I know someone asked like, oh yeah, but I made this huge genealogy, and they said, the name should be around in some branch. No, because I actually made it so in the genealogy that a lot of the off branches they continuously marry down in social rank because it's the youngest son, the youngest daughter, right?
Yeah.
So the names will disappear eventually. The reason why the great house names have lived on is they've been made an active effort to keep it alive.
Well, yeah, and they've switched off on the throne too, which would give even more incentive to keep the names.
Yeah.
Um, the Romes haven't been on the throne in like 5 generations at that point, which I guess is why they're trying to get back on the throne. But yeah, that's the I didn't even catch that. That is the end of all the Romes after Tuft and Styla and Volga are. I mean, Volga doesn't actually. I don't think he actually carries the name Rome. I haven't decided yet, but he is.
Honest.
He's one of his parents was in Rome though, so.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think since you brought him up, I think from what we discussed that he kind of Volga would kind of resent that kind of petty bitterness that his family has displayed over uh,
He
from
wants to escape the curse.
yeah, like for example, I put Style as a dynastic name because I don't like it as a first name, so it would make sense to be a dynastic name at least, right?
I
And
mean, it's
I wouldn't even
implied
imagine,
that it's a dynastic name, even in Triforce
yeah.
Heroes.
But even then, like I wouldn't imagine him having that name. He would just, he's like, nope,
Nope.
scratch that up.
I'm embarrassed by my family, and he should be embarrassed by his family.
Because, for example, that I to really solidify that bitterness, like Syl's sister's name was her first name, given name was Maud, and all the daughters, all the elder daughter of that line have the same name, as a real symbol of their bitterness, of that injustice. It's like proper bitterness.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't imagine him wanting to partake in that family tradition.
Yeah, YouTube's saying we cut out again, so poodles everyone, just in case. But I did see some questions that are kind of relevant, but I lost them, so
I can see if I can find
let
him.
me, yeah. One of them it mostly had to do with Link. One of them was about Arn and his mother and stuff. Let me just wait and make sure that we get some poodles, though. Because I don't want to start talking when YouTube is freaking out. This might end up turning into a boomer stream. Honestly, we made it an hour without... Okay, people can hear us still, but we made it... If it did cut out here, we made it an hour before it cut out, which is pretty good, but people can hear us. So, okay. Someone was asking if Link's mother is alive during this point of the story, and his biological mother died in the Gerudo Wars. His father is alive. I guess I'll tell the whole Link's whole backstory. So super spoilers here. If you don't want anything in regards to Link being spoiled, I guess plug your ears and go la 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 la. But anyway, so as everyone should know now, Link is part of the Gustav family name. The Gustavs have been living in Galatia for centuries. And they kind of have this tradition of selective marriage, keeping their bloodline a certain way so that when the time is right, they can return to Hyrule and try and take the throne legally, yada, 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 whatever. Link's father basically he married a woman who, she was all she basically fell in love with the idea of, oh, you're gonna retake the throne someday and I'm gonna become the queen or whatever. But that's not the Gustav way. They're all about, living in exile and waiting for the right moment to take the throne. So she kind of became a little disillusioned with his father because he's like, nah, I'm just gonna be this farmer in Galatia. And well, he's not a farmer, but I'm gonna live this simple life in Galatia. It's not the right time to take the Hylian throne. They're having all these wars with their neighbors. They don't need political turmoil right now. They're already whatever. So his wife, who is Link's biological mother, her dream is dying, and she basically married him for all the wrong reasons, whatever. So she takes his son Link and flees with him. And that's how Link becomes separated from his father. So Link's been kind of living kind of like a vagabond for how many years is it? Like 20 years now?
Yeah. I mean, he was picked up by Hylian pretty early on. So
Yeah, that's true. He is. Yeah, so basically Link and his mother, Link's mother stole him away from his father, and she fled into Hyrule, and Link took up jobs there as a kid. He worked at Lon Lon Ranch. He kind of just lived as like this low-level scummy peasant with his mother and grandmother until the Gerudo Wars broke out, and then his mother died during the Gerudo Wars, and he became, I guess he technically isn't an orphan because his father's still alive, but that's when he was picked up by the Wizrobes. So yeah, Link's father is still alive. His biological mother's dead, but his father did end up marrying another woman who gave birth to Hyrule. So he has a legal mother, but he doesn't have a biological mother anymore. So yes and no. His mother's still alive, but not his biological mother. And yes, his biological father is still alive, and he does have a reconciliation with him at some point in the story when he decides, huh?
Kind of want to make a Gustav genealogy, honestly.
Yeah, it'd be a much more easier genealogy because they were very they're I mean, I'm certain there were other instances where they had a rowdy son or daughter who was like, nah, I'm gonna marry a peasant, and they spawned a bastard here and there. Because in Galatia, although Galatia is a pretty secular community, so I don't know, they probably had a pretty decent arrangement with the Galatians. I don't know. I guess we could figure that out later if you'd rather do that later than now. So that's kind of the backstory of Link and his family. But the reason there's hostility between Link and his father is because Link never returned to Galatia. He kind of kept wandering around, and it's because Link didn't want to live. Not like his mother, but Link didn't want to live up to his family's traditions and lineage. He wanted to wander around, and he wanted to at first, he fell in love with Saria, and he wanted to marry Saria, and he was interested in Saria, but in the back of his head, he's like, no, I'm a Gustav, I can't do this. So that's why he broke Saria's heart and left the Kokiri Forest, and then he got engaged to Princess Rudo, and then in the back of his head, he's like, no, my father would hate this. So he breaks off his engagement to Rudo, and then he does end up becoming engaged to Malin, who actually is a candidate that his father probably would approve of, but he ends up getting Malin killed because of his stupidity. And then eventually he grows up and he's like, you know what, I'm done kind of wandering around and getting nothing done. I'll go back to my father, and I will renounce my vagabondness, and I will live up to my family traditions, and I will take the Hylian throne and put Gustav back on the throne, and that's kind of what happens. Yeah, that
It's
was a
long overdue.
mouthful.
Long overdue,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
We had this discussion the other day where which house is the assest,
They're
and
all kind of
honestly,
douchebaggy.
yeah, and I know the Nohansas get a lot of flack, but they did a lot of good stuff too, right? Like,
The Daltons are probably the least douchebaggy, honestly. Although they
'cause they're just
got their descendants.
bankers.
Yeah, their descendants are bankers, so I guess they have control of a lot of people's monies, but which is kind of a douchebag thing. They probably have a lot of people stuck in usury, but the Daltons, as far as like their family traditions and stuff, are. I mean, their name ended up kind of getting washed away because they had so little.
Fish.
Yeah, because they had so little concern about respecting the family name. They ended up mixing with the Zoras and spawning a bunch of half-breed abominations. So they, I don't know, they failed to find a nice balance.
I think, yeah, at some point, like, and you can see this if you look at the line of succession of the royal families, that there's very evident at some point the Daltons kind of fades away. Like, it's very clear that they stopped focusing a lot of their political influence in.
They're more interested in money and I guess
Yeah,
banging anything that moves. And that
I mean,
when you give into money and banging anything that moves, you're gonna dissolve. You're gonna fragment and disintegrate. That's just how it works.
also honestly though, from if even you consider their prime motive of just building up economic power, they're still based in Lanero, so mingling with the natives more and more would make sense, right?
Yeah,
From that kind of standpoint,
yeah.
just to kind of have consolidate their own power, and you can kind of tell from the royal line that at some point you can see that they kind of lost interest in kingdom politics,
And
and
even though they kind of
did
lost
their own
their
things.
name, if you look at Laneru, they're one of the most powerful, considering its size too. They're like the most economically powerful region of Hyrule. So even though their legacy kind of failed with their name, their legacy kind of still is powerful just through money. Because, well, that makes sense because that's what they gave into. It makes sense that if it were to live on, it would live on through money.
Yeah,
Someone
I mean they're
asked
still
if
around.
Talon is still alive. Yes, Talon is actually still alive after his daughter is unfortunately killed. There's actually going to be a depressing scene where Link has to give the news to her father. I don't know why I'm giggling at that. I guess I'm a monster, but I know every time I'm like, there's gonna be this depressing scene or this horrifying scene, and I'm just giggling when I'm talking about it. I'm a terrible person. No, in seriousness, it's not even gonna be any words. It's just gonna be, you see Link approaching Talon, and he's like an old man at this point. He's like in his like what 70s, I think.
Yeah,
He's pretty damn old. So he's really old at this point. And you just see it on his face with no words. It's like, oh, my legacy's dead, and it's like he dies there before he actually physically dies. That's
okay, that's really depressing.
yeah, it is really depressing, and it's Link's fault too that Malon's dead. So
Speaking of Link, there's actually something I really want to see, and I'm wondering if you were ever gonna do it.
what, the scene with the horse when he's got his sword
No,
up
no.
what?
No, I was thinking of something I want a scene where Link is knighted.
Well,
Have you ever
I
entertained that
mean,
thought? Like,
the scene I sent you, he's kind of knighted.
yeah,
Not
but
really.
I think
That's more like his father passing on the family, the control of the
yeah,
family name to him. So that's not really being knighted, but he technically was knighted by the Wizrobes. I guess I didn't
but
really have that scene though.
yeah,
But you
but
mean
I think
knighted by Tetra?
yeah, Tetra or Kazakh, I think would be very nice. And honestly, because I think it would symbolically make a lot of sense for him because his arc, that's another point in his arc where he's a different person, right? Because he was knighted by the Wizrobes, and he's a different person at that time, and then he ends up somewhere else, right?
I would probably say Tetra would knight him after they're in
Everything.
exile, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, Daphne's might knight him after killing the fallen sage. I would say that's worthy of being knighted, but then the fallen sage should have ended with him being knighted. It kind of
Yeah,
blew that opportunity, and honestly, I thought the fallen sage ending with him and Tetra would be better than a knighting, but I don't know. Maybe Tetra knights him. Wow, we actually have a lot of viewers right now. Maybe because everyone's homesick. And it's like really late in the day, too. This is the most viewers we've ever had.
Let's see. Trying to think. Oh, yeah.
Someone's asking if Link and Malin end up together to complete the best ship. I actually do think they are the most logical ship in terms of Nintendo canon, because from the impression we get of Link and Malin in Ocarina of Time, they kind of have a similar background, and in terms of the culture, they would be the most likely to marry. In terms of Nephy canon, they do end up engaged. They are set up to get married, but through Link's kind of arrogance and stupidity, he actually ends up getting Malin killed, so that's cut short. Spoilers.
Oh yeah. I remembered something. Speaking of Link's mother, because someone asked me, I think it was 2 weeks ago, because we were discussing Hylian as to why Link keeps putting his trust in Hylian, right? And I think his mother is a very important part of that, because functionally she is his mother figure.
Yes.
And if you consider how
her name even doesn't her name even mean the good mother?
Yeah, good mother. Good mother.
I love it.
And especially considering how shitty his actual mother was, his biological mother, it makes sense for him to really.
Yeah, he'd latch on to a motherly figure.
And it makes sense for Hylia as well, because as we talked about before,
she lost her children.
Yeah, she was robbed of her own motherhood. So it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think.
Someone says, I'm sad Link doesn't get a happy ending. I mean, he has happy moments and he has sad moments. I guess his ending, I would say, is bittersweet. It's like both happy, but it's happy at the cost of getting kicked in the groin. So it's bittersweet, I guess. I wouldn't say Link has like a horrific, like depressing, nihilistic ending, but obviously he doesn't have a rainbow sunshine, everything's gonna be great from here on out ending. He has kind of like a bittersweet, he dies with purpose. His ending's with purpose, I guess, which is the most, I guess, any human can hope for. I mean, I'm not a person who actually believes happiness is the goal of life. Happiness is always temporary and it's always fleeting, and I don't mean that in like a depressing nihilistic sense. I mean there's things in life better than happiness.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say Link's ending is unhappy, but I wouldn't say it's happy either. It's kind of, I don't know. Anyway, I think I kind of interrupted your thought. I'm sorry. What were you going on about? I'm sorry.
I was just his entire relationship with Hylia, because as someone brought it up, you kind of get the impression though that in the last mission that he kind of doubts it, but his like you said, his kind of love for his foster mother kind of makes him hand wave it, which would make sense.
Yeah, he's torn apart between Tetra and Hylia when they both conflict over the throne. I mean, obviously it's obvious who he eventually sides with, but initially he actually is like, no, I'm a knight of the Wizrobes. I've taken vows to help the Wizrobes, so I'm sorry, I've got to put Hylia on the throne. And he tries to convince Tetra too, like, don't do this. This is kind of dumb. You made a pact with Hylia. So for several missions, Link is actually on the side of Hylia and the Wizrobes, and then they plan on removing Tetra by force, and that's when Link's like, no, I can't do this. And that's when he's like, nah, I'm gonna break my Wizrobe vows.
How do you think that would impact Hylia though? I can imagine that would kind of fuck.
Yeah, it probably really hurt Hylia too, because Link is it's like her surrogate son in a way. It's probably why she gave him so much freedom too, because she was like, "Oh, it's my special boy." She like spoiled him, even though it backfired on her horribly. And so she's like a bitch to Lana and all the other Hylians. They all did, they have like this strict hierarchy. They all have uniforms, and she's like, "Nah, Link's my boy. He can wear what he wants. He can wear his collation attire. He can go and live in the Kokiri Forest for 5 years as long as he calls mom every month."
I think it's good though. I honestly that when he finally chooses to side with Tetra, I think that would be a very good moment to show some of Hyla's humanity, because it's very essential to her arc what that would represent.
It would hurt Hylia to have Link just be like, "No, I'm actually, I'm sorry, I'm against you now." That probably really hurt Hylia. I mean, it hurt Link too.
Yeah, but like twice she loses what's essentially her child, right? So it's like super, super bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are gonna go through a lot of shit. We haven't even talked about Saria yet.
Oh yeah.
I guess we'll get to that. I don't know, until we can find a way to segue into that.
I guess we could talk about, the Volga.
The Volga. I guess we could talk about. Let me see if there's any questions first before we go on to the Volga. What happened to Lana? Well, Lana serves Hylia. That's actually the moment Link is like, "No, I'm gonna side with Tetra and betray Hylia or turn on all my vows." That's actually when Lana gets horribly disfigured. He has to turn against Lana too, and that breaks Lana's poor little heart. It's gonna be like such a gut-wrenching scene. That's also when Link is forced to kill Nostrum too. Who Nostrum's like his surrogate father too.
Yeah.
So he kills Nostrum, and he doesn't want to. He basically does it kind of, unlike like a self-defense, kind of accidentally sort of way. And so yeah, Link like loses everything there, except for Tetra. He loses Lana, who's, even though he doesn't really, I mean, he doesn't hate Lana, but he kind of, Lana's kind of like that annoying person you knew in high school who was like your friend, but you never really liked talking to them. I don't know if you had someone like that in high school.
Oh yeah, I can relate.
Like, I don't know. It seemed like me and all the people I knew, we always had like that one friend who was always a girl who was just always friendly, but it was just something about them was really annoying and you didn't want to be around them. That is Link's relationship with Lana. Like, they're friends, but something about her just doesn't click with him, and he just doesn't like being around her, I guess.
Considering their position, they're kind of like siblings, honestly, so...
Yeah. Which doesn't work well for Lana, I guess. But, so yeah, and that one scene, Hylia loses Link, who's like her surrogate son. Link loses both his surrogate mother and surrogate father. He loses Lana, who's probably one of his only friends in the world. He loses his surrogate brother, Karak, who also loses his biological father. Yeah, everyone's just, in that one little moment, everyone's losing something except for Tetra, because she's already lost everything. If anything, she's gaining something, because she gains the support of Link, so Tetra's the only person that wins in that little scene.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, bringing this back to the Romes. What do you? Okay, so if you were in kind of like in Impa's shoes, and I guess the other nobles.
I forgot about Impa.
Yeah, if you were in Impa's shoes, and the other nobles of Hyrule, and they would have to, if they made a decision of in which to support, what would you have chosen? Would you have gone with the Hanses like Impa, or would you go stick with Raru and stick to the rules?
If I was in Impa's position, I'd probably support Volga. Because
you would?
Yeah, you're just like, what? I'm like, yeah, because he has an element of he he doesn't want the throne. He doesn't. I know that sounds weird, but to me, I actually think that is a key ingredient to a king. Is you don't actually want the throne in like a passionate sort of way. I think that's actually a key ingredient to a king. If you disagree with me,
No, no,
I'm all for it. But that's
I
why
think
I actually think, in context of Game of Thrones, Stannis is the rightful king because he doesn't actually want it.
it's my duty.
Yeah, like I know that might lead to a person being on the throne who's not necessarily fit to. I don't know, but
I mean, it can be a positive and a big negative.
yeah, I think. Let me see if I can find a way to articulate this. I think two key traits to a proper king is, yeah, one, they don't. It's not that they don't want the throne, it's that they don't want it in like a passionate sort of way. Like,
Out of desire,
yeah.
I guess.
And then another key trait, which will probably not make a lot of sense to a modern person, is a key trait of being a king is you have the power to usurp the previous king. You actually have the power to do that, but you choose not to.
Yeah.
I think there's something kind of profound about that. That comes from the story of King David, but I guess I won't get into that. But I think that trait actually is in Link. Link has the power to murder kings, but he chooses not to. Volga lacks that though. Volga will kill a king on the throne if he feels it's the wrongful king, which he kills his brother. So yeah, I guess Volga isn't fit to rule. But Impa doesn't know that at the time. She's trying to pick her replacement for the Nohansons. But I don't know, if I was her, I would probably pick the Volga. But she probably didn't pick him because at the time he would have been like, I have no interest in the throne. And then so if anything, she probably did originally consider him, and then she was like, nah, he's not gonna go after it. So I'll pick his brother.
I think would it be too kind of rigid for Impa? Because I don't think
that is
like
true.
Impa's
She
methods.
might see him as really difficult to control, especially because of his connection to dragons. She might feel like he's too much of a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
Which he is.
I mean, not even only that. I just don't think like he would be very hard to not just control, but
yeah. Whereas King Tuft and Styla are probably a lot more easier to manipulate, especially Tuft because he's kind of a moron.
Yeah, like he's not the kind of person that is easily manipulated. He just kind of sticks to the book, do everything the right way.
I mean,
like,
if you understand that about a person, you can manipulate a person.
Yeah.
So Volga could be manipulated by the right person. So someone's asking if Volga and Link are brothers. They're not biological brothers. Honestly, though, I did consider it. I did actually consider that. I considered Volga being another branch off of the Gustav line, and then I think we decided against that.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been an interesting angle, but nah, because then Volga would have the strongest claim to the throne, and he probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I still think according to the law, he does have the best claim.
Yeah, I guess according to the law, Akazu does. Well,
yeah.
No, because Akazu came after. Akazu was married to the Nohanson line, not the Rome line. So Volga and his brother still have the better claim over Akazu. But Volga still uses Akazu's use of the law to oust Tetra as a bastard. So there's a little bit of irony there.
Because he's a man. He goes like here. I think the key difference is that Akazu doesn't really care the fact that Tetra is a bastard on that kind of level, right? It's
no, he
kind
doesn't.
of it's a way to kind of make her illegitimate. While in Volga's case, it's more like she just can't be.
Yeah, like at this point, Volga, before Volga finds out Tetra is actually a legal bastard, he actually is on her side. Like they're allied with each other against his brother and Akazu. And then when it becomes apparent that she doesn't have a strong legal claim to the throne, he's like, "I'm sorry, like I can't stay sided with you. You're not the rightful heir." It's nothing personal, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's by the book.
Someone
But
says, "Don't worry, you'll invent another bastard." No, Tetra's the only. And the thing is, you can even argue she isn't. Like, it depends on if you consider the annulment of her mother's marriage to Akazu legal or not. Like, in my mind, I actually think that the annulment of their marriage was completely legal.
Yeah,
Um,
consummated it. That's what
um,
annulment means.
yeah, her mother didn't consummate the marriage with Akazu. It's a legal annulment in my mind, but there's enough people in Hyrule who dislike Tetra where they're like, no, that was an illegal annulment. Akazu's right. You are not illegal. You were born out of wedlock to the royal family. You are a bastard. So in my mind, Tetra's actually not a bastard. She's just a bastard by the law that the country goes
it's a
with.
technicality.
King Henry VIII.
Yeah, it's like a King Henry VIII situation.
The funny thing, though, I would actually argue that she kind of embodies that prejudice idea of bastardy because she does fuck off from her kingdom. And
Yeah.
she does actually break an oath that she made.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is Tetra's not necessarily the best ruler. She does a lot of really terrible, not terrible, like morally terrible, but like stupid things. She basically leads a peasant revolt against a foreign nation before her father's even aware of what happened. That's not a smart thing to do. She has really bad optics, basically.
But the thing is, like, she actually kind of embodies that idea of treachery by, first off, she breaks her oath to Hylia, which is still not a good thing, right? It's an
Yeah.
oath she made. It's an actual.
It's
oath
a
she
no-win
made,
situation for her though, because the people don't like Hylia, because she's like this
Yeah.
weird foreign goddess. Like,
But that's the thing. Like, that's why she breaks her oath to Hylia, but she also.
but it
breaks her oath-
backfires on her too. It's like this no-win
Yeah.
scenario.
She breaks her oath to the people of Hyrule by selling,
Yeah.
the kingdom. to
Yeah,
the
she's
foreign
like,
gods.
okay, the people are mad at me because I made this oath with this foreign deity to take the throne. So the people don't like me for that. So I'm going to break my oath. But if I break my oath, the people will see me as like this treacherous oath breaker. So it's a no-win scenario for her, basically.
Yeah.
And she ends up breaking the oath to to appease the people, so she doesn't have a civil war on her hand, and that's what happens anyway. It still degenerates into a giant civil war anyway. But from her perspective, if she hadn't have made that oath, then they would all be dead and being consumed by Goma right now. So like, so no, I don't think Tetra is morally in the wrong. She just
No.
made a few stupid decisions because she, ironically, even though she's a prophet, she didn't see into the future.
Yeah.
I also apologize to everyone in the chat. Everyone who lives in the building is kind of stuck in here because of the coronavirus thing, and I hear multiple people talking. So if you hear other voices, there's nothing I can do about it. I kind of live in a crowded situation right now. Huh?
I can barely hear anyone. So I think it's
Okay. All right. I mean, it's distracting to me personally, but to me, it's more so that like I have trouble focusing on what I'm thinking about if I hear all of this noise.
Yeah.
So if it seems like I'm losing my train of thought, it's because I'm kind of distracted by noise in the background. But I don't know. The noise went away. So anyway, what the heck were we talking about? Speaking of forgetting about the subject.
Tetra, Tetris.
Oh yeah, Tetra. Tetra's legal status as a bastard or a legal heir, I'm pretty sure that's a situation where it's entirely up to the player's perspective. Like,
Yeah.
that depends on if you consider the annulment between her mother and Akazu legal or not. That's entirely up to you. I personally think it was a legal annulment. So, in my mind, I don't consider Tetra a legal bastard, but that's what the kingdom goes with because of the situation. They end up siding with Akazu's interpretation of the law because they don't like what Tetra's been doing.
Yeah.
So, regardless if she actually is a bastard or not, though, the fact that she marries Link does restore her legitimacy or make it stronger, again, depending on your perspective. So, yeah. Medieval politics, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, technically, for her to be ever legitimate, Link would have to become king, and he would actually have to make her legitimate because she's still illegitimate.
Yeah.
You don't undo bastardy by marrying into a higher position.
A lord or a king has to restore. Yeah, they have to restore, or I guess restore isn't the right word. They have to basically make you a legal heir. Cause restore kind of implies, I guess in Tetra's case it's restore because she wasn't a bastard for a while and then she became one. So I guess for her he would restore her legal status.
Yeah.
So yeah, Link would basically have to be like, yeah, you're not a bastard anymore. The marriage itself doesn't. Yeah. If anything, him marrying a bastard would ruin his legal status.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be okay though.
What?
I think it's gonna be okay though, considering what he does.
I don't know if things will be okay. Someone asked, how does Akazu convince anyone with that spooky boy face? I mean,
he has a mask.
Well, one, he does have a mask, so I kind of liken him to King Baldwin, who also, well, actually, I don't know if there's any historical evidence that Baldwin wore a mask, but in a lot of different artwork and movie interpretations of that particular crusade, King Baldwin usually wears a mask to cover his face, but Akazu I guess he pulls a Palpatine. He's like, they scarred my face because they wanted to oust me and cover up the truth or whatever. He tries to ruin Daphne's legacy, I guess, and like he kind of turns his disfigurement against his enemies, I guess. And honestly, it's probably not so much that people actually like Akazu. They're just using his legalese as an excuse, as yet another excuse to turn against Tetra, because people are not happy with her. And then, King Tuft becomes a contender to the throne, so that's how Akazu loses support, because they're like, well, I don't know, King Tuft has a stronger claim. Poor Akazu.
I think there are multiple perspectives, and I think, again, it's up to everyone, the player and everyone listening, that what you think is correct, really, because I don't think there's any right answers, and it rarely is in a succession crisis because the law is muddy.
Yeah.
For example, there is an argument that all the Nohansons, all the Zeldas are illegitimate because the rightful, Seal was a man, and their matrilineal, the throne should have passed to Maud, his sister, right, or her children. That's just the law, but it didn't. But you can also make the counter argument that it doesn't really matter who has the crown. It all matters is are they functionally the monarch, right?
Yeah.
Like right by conquest, for example.
I was gonna say, then there's the right by conquest, which kind of trumps all of that.
So there are multiple angles to consider.
For a little bit there, I even considered Volga just trying to take the throne just as through pure conquest. He actually has no legal claim, but that's more Ganondorf's kind of area.
Yeah.
Ganondorf is more of the conqueror. He has no legal connection to anything.
I guess Volga conquers in the name of duty.
Yeah.
Because he knows he's the legitimate heir according to the law, and it's kind of his duty to make everything right.
I really don't think it's unfair to compare him to Stannis. He's even got the fire thing going on, as you pointed out. I even for the image for the stream, I just slapped his face on Stannis. The similarities are kind of sad and unfortunate. Well, I don't know if unfortunate is the word I'd use, but it was one of those situations where like, oh yeah, this character, yada yada yada, and then I'm like, oh, he's just like Stannis. Whoops.
I like Volga.
Darunia would be Davos.
Yeah.
Sorry, it would not be Witch though. It's not the best comparison.
I mean, if his union is rooted in some sort of like prophetic symbolism, then
that's even more of a Stannis comparison.
Yeah.
I guess we should just go right into Volga then, because I think he's the one we've least talked about. So, basically, we see it in the Fallen Sage, but Death Mountain is kind of freezing over. The Gorons are kind of like, shit, our homeland is freezing over. We can't live here. And Volga basically is trying to help them, I guess, restart the volcano. Through a bunch of symbolic mumbo jumbo. Obviously, that's because there's no Volvagians. There's not a chaotic element to the mountain anymore. It's kind of become static. So he's like, what you need is dragons, but obviously, Gorons hate Volvagians, which makes sense symbolically, because Gorons are like they're static. They're like these rock creatures that just sleep around. So of course they'd be opposed to a chaotic being. So Volga's like, look, I have a way to control them, so let me control, your surviving Volvagians, and I'll restore Death Mountain. And so basically, the Volga's entrance into the story is he's trying to help the Gorons save their homeland from turning into a frozen hellscape. He hasn't had the best of luck with it yet, but he has some control over the Volvagians. That's kind of his starting point. I guess without going into too much detail, he marries Saria, which I think a lot of people were like, what? I considered making it so that he marries Rudo, but you were like, nah, we don't need any more Zora marriages.
No.
And also the symbolism of a tree and fire is a pretty. I think it's superior to fire and fish.
It's a very cool visual.
Yeah. And there are honestly enough ties between the two characters. And especially because of Saria's connection to Darunia. Like, although Rudo also has a connection to Darunia too. So honestly, it could go either way. Like, I really could see it going either way, that Volga would take Rudo as a wife or Saria. I think either one could work, but you were just like, no more Zora marriages. So I'm like, all right, sorry, Rudo. And in fact, to add extra salt to Rudo's wounds, you find out she never finds this out, but you find out from her father during the Gerudo Wars. Okay, no, before we get into that, basically, during the entire Labyrinth arc, Rudo is basically trying to groom Saria to marry her brother, Rallis. Rudo actually is interested in Volga in the context of the story. So she does want to marry Volga, but Volga ends up marrying Saria. So to add tons of salt to Rudo's wound, she was grooming Saria, who's like one of her best friends at this point, to marry her brother because she thought they'd be a suitable match. But Saria ends up marrying the man that she was interested in, and you find out, but Rudo never finds this out, that when she was a child, her father had arranged a marriage between Rudo and Volga when Volga was a child. She was arranged to be married to him, but because she was like a rebellious little brat, she was like, no, I'm not gonna go with this arranged marriage or whatever. So if she had just listened to her father when she was a kid, she would have ended up marrying the man that she wanted to marry in her future, like 20 years or 30 years before that, however long it was. So Rudo's like the most unintentionally tragic character in Hyrule Conquest.
Feels bad.
Yeah, poor Rudo. Honestly, I didn't even mean to have like Rudo go through all this crap, but she just kind of incidentally ends up going through more crap than any other character in the story.
That arises an interesting question though, regarding Ruth's father.
Rudo's father? What about him?
Was this?
Oh, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Uh, is it okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay, so because that's an interesting arrangement, right? Was he scheming?
Of course he was.
Yeah.
He's a fat bastard. Well, I don't know if he's literally a bastard, but Ruda's father is kind of a. I don't see him as a very nice man. She hated her father, which is probably why she doesn't completely hate Darunia, because in Nephy canon, Darunia kills her father.
Yeah.
But he's her father, so obviously she still feels animosity to Darunia. It's like her relationship with Darunia, I think, is one of the most interesting ones in the whole story.
It's complicated.
Yeah, because it's like it's not romantic, but it kind of is. It's platonic, but not really. It's like brotherly and sisterly, but not exactly. There's even like it's like all these different like levels of the hierarchy all at once. They have like a very interesting, and it was unintentional on my part. They have like this really interesting relationship, and the fire and ice symbolism too is pretty interesting. But so yeah, poor Rudo.
I mean, I'm not sure where he wanted to go with that scheme, but kind of happy that it didn't work
I
out.
I haven't decided yet. Honestly, at the moment, I just want it to be like one of those weird Shakespearean tragic ironies or whatever, that if Rudo had just listened to her father when she was a kid, she wouldn't be in the situation she's in now.
Yeah, yeah.
I find that like really funny. So Volga ends up marrying Saria and promising, basically she wants to help him restore Death Mountain too, obviously because she's a friend of Darunia too, and she doesn't just want to restore Death Mountain, she wants to like make it lively, she wants it to thrive. So they start working together to restore Death Mountain. Obviously though, because trees and fire are not a good combination, it doesn't really go well. Their plans ultimately in the end don't work, and neither does their marriage. So yeah.
But memes aside though, because due to I guess what the kind of type of man Volga is, was symbolism involved in making that match?
Yes.
I really feel it was.
Yes, it was.
So like freaking symbolic prophecy kind of deal.
Well,
Because it
yeah,
really feels
because
like
Volga is kind of like a raging, not like a madman, but he has anger issues basically. He doesn't have complete control of himself. He's kind of a beast in that regard. And his goal is to tame dragons, which you can't be a beast to do that. So there's some really wonderful symbolism with Saria basically taming this beast. And like basically trying to calm down this angry man. It's almost like a Beauty and the Beast story, I guess. But it doesn't work in the end because I'm a terrible person.
I mean, burning trees or burning bush, I guess.
Yeah, the burning bush. Poor Saria. No, honestly, I feel like, because I don't really want Volga to be like completely villainous. He's just kind of against Tetra because of the situation, and obviously he has a personal beef against his brother, so that's why he kills his brother. But his undoing is the fact that he messes with dragons. Like that's something, and it's not even just him like slaying a dragon or taming one dragon. He's trying to control. He's trying to encapsulate all of dragonhood, which you can't do. No one can do it. And that ends up just backfiring on him, and Mido's somehow going to be connected to that, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another connection. That's actually the first connection I made between Volga and Saria, is that Mido's a prisoner in Death Mountain, so at first I was like, yeah, Volga's probably going to offer to execute Mido as like part of his marriage proposal. I don't know if I'll go with that. Maybe I'll still do that. Maybe he'll be like, hey, I'll execute this chump for you if you marry me. Maybe she's like tempted for a minute because she hates Mido so much. But I don't know. Maybe she'd spare him.
I think she would.
You think she would?
Yeah, and I think it would add a lot of weight to her arc. Not Mido's arc personally, but or specifically, but her arc.
Maybe it'd be precursor to Link.
Yeah, because she moves away from, that kind of the pain and the past, right? Just like, and I honestly think having him be killed would kind of ruin her arc in a way.
Yeah. So
because,
then, should Mido kill Volga, or somehow be involved in his death?
Yes. I think
Okay.
that
Instead of the original plan, which was
yeah.
Link kills him, and that kind of forever stains his connection to Saria.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it the other day. Honestly, I feel like the problem is I don't know if Mido is smart enough to do what I want to do, but almost like somehow Mido orchestrates a situation where either Saria or Link are forced to kill Volga, and it's kind of like, okay, which one of you is going to kill him? Like, if one of you kills him, it's one of those like impossible moral situations. But I don't think Mido would be smart enough to pull that off because he's kind of a moron.
Yeah.
Like, Mido is seriously not very big brained. He's one of the dumber characters. And he's basically been in a freaking Goron prison for several years now, so he doesn't really have an opportunity to expand his knowledge. So I don't really see him with he doesn't have any power, so he's like in a prison. So I don't know how the hell he could orchestrate that kind of situation unless it was just incidental, but I don't know. I'd have to think on that. But I was thinking about it more, and I do feel like Mido should be somehow connected to Volga's death rather than the original plan. Either way, Mido's gonna get horribly killed by a dragon, probably.
Damn dragons. I wanna also touch upon what you said that you didn't want to make Volga very villainous, but I think honestly that kind of character that is a very rigid, kind of unbending, by the book sort of type would naturally, while not a villain, would have that sort of would have villainous tendencies, right? Because
well, he's definitely an antagonist.
yeah, but it's like it's
I mean, he's against Tetra and Link, and Tetra and Link are probably the closest thing to protagonists that there is, even though there's like hundreds of characters that the game takes the side of, so they're not exactly like the protagonists. But I mean, for parts of the game you see it from Volga's perspective too, so I would say even at certain times he's a protagonist. I mean, there's missions you play as Sulcaris, so I'm getting really postmodern here.
I think it's more the fact that that sort of person can easily be seen as an antagonist or villainous, right?
Yeah.
It's not that they are evil or bad people. It's just that that sort of personality is very often seen as kind of villainous, right? Because because most people, let's say, yeah, he supports Zarya, but then he decides to side against her because having a bastard on the throne is against the rules. I would guess most people will find that very, not necessarily villainous, but very douchey.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he's just doing the right thing, right?
It's the law.
It's the law. That's how it's supposed to be, right? And I think like that kind of character is just naturally just sort of antagonistic. I mean, just look at, since you brought up Stannis, just look at Stannis.
Yeah.
He's clearly not a bad person, but he is still kind of seen as
he's an antagonist to basically almost every other group in that story.
Yeah. But that's not because he's an asshole, that's because he's so caught up in this idea of, doing the right, or like doing the thing that he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's not always the that's obviously not always the you know the best thing to do, right?
Yeah.
There are nuances to reality to that has to be considered. For example, so just look at it this way, right? So Volga wants to become. He doesn't have a kind of lust for power or desire for the throne, but he ultimately decides that no, I have to do this because it's my duty and I have to make things right. But by doing what he considers is right, he kind of causes a lot of misery
Yep.
and destruction, right?
He's.
And then you.
I think it's like you said earlier, he's too inflexible, which there is irony because he's connected to dragons, which is all about fluidity and flexibility.
Yeah, and I
That's probably why he can't ultimately control the dragons, because he's and the funny thing is fire is connected to too much order and rigidity. Fire is basically the result of hyper order. Like it's the cleansing thing that destroys something that's too rigid, basically. So again, all sorts of symbolism happening moments. Not even intentionally.
He wants to burn down the chaos.
The thing is, you can use fire to do that. Like fire basically creates order by breaking down another form of order. That's the purpose of fire. So in a way you can use fire as a weapon against something chaotic, but it's not like trying to find a way to put it into words.
It's more like it's also the idea that because in a lot of early symbolism, the forest is associated, the wilderness is associated with chaos because it's the big unknown, right?
Yes.
It's changing, and fire burns it away so that you're able to. You burn away the forest so you're able to get, build stuff on it.
Yes, it's almost like fire is. It's like chaos turned against itself in a way.
Yeah.
I think that's a way to. It's really hard for me to articulate. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I get it intuitively, but I don't want to say fire is chaos because it's not exactly, but it kind of is.
Yeah, it's what it represents is order, but its uses can be chaotic, right? Because you can use fire in an orderly way, but obviously it can cause chaos. It's just but I think there are more nuances to fire in general because you have fire and then you have different kinds of fire, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like fire as a symbol usually represents civilization, but a fire as a forest fire is chaotic.
Yeah. I mean, again, it depends on the context of history, but
honestly,
fire is usually seen as like a almost like a meta, kind of like a divine sort of ordering of the world.
My interpretation was always that fire is an expression of taming chaos because you have something that is inherently dangerous and chaotic under control, assumingly.
Yeah, it's like controlled chaos, basically.
Yeah, but
which sounds like an oxymoron, I guess, but
yeah, it kind of is, but at the same time, because you are taming, pretty powerful forces, but it can quickly use it to further ordering stuff, but it can quickly get out of control. That's what fire does. You can have a campfire and suddenly you lit the entire forest around you.
Yeah. I mean, the reason symbolically fire is also connected with order is because in ancient cosmology, it's the source of all light.
Yeah.
It literally illuminates so you can see. So that's why it's also connected to, like, the divine and the gods and stuff. And like fire was generally considered as like a divine thing, like something meta.
I also think it's also because
I knew it was only a matter of time before we started talking about symbolic stuff and forgetting about Hyrule Conquest.
Before we get back to Hyrule Conquest, I just add that our early ancestors considered fire obviously very dangerous because they would associate it with bushfires.
Yeah, well, it is really dangerous.
Yeah, but at that point when we, quotation mark, invented fire, it became a symbol of controlling that danger.
Yeah.
And that a lot, later on was associated with order, because you are taking something that's inherently dangerous and you are taming it.
Yeah.
But that's when fire becomes most dangerous, because when you think you're in control, that's usually
I'm
when.
sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm trying to
No,
listen.
it's fine. That's what makes fire dangerous, because you think you're in control, but it can quickly lose control of it. It's like
Yeah.
having a candlelight in your bedroom, and you think you're in control, you think everything is fine, but if
You're not.
suddenly you light your curtains on fire or something.
Yeah, there goes the house.
Yeah, and there goes the house. But yeah, bringing this back.
Yeah, Wispy
That's
Whiskers
kinda like
is saying he's saying that Volga's trying to build a brass tower. He's trying to put the reins on primal chaos, something that can't be done materially. Sort of.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
You can tame a dragon. The problem with both Volga and with modernity is we're trying to tame dragon in its entirety, which is impossible. Like, that's basically what science does. Like, science, the purpose of science is basically to tame all dragons, and the concept of dragonness, which is impossible. You can tame dragons, though. It is possible. Well, you could slay them or you could kill them. Like, you can turn a dragon into a weapon or some kind of tool, like, to use in a positive way. It's very dangerous, but it is possible. But the problem with Volga is he wants to control all dragons everywhere at all times forever, or at least until he dies. You can't do that, and he goes after the biggest and baddest of the dragons, thinking, well, if I awaken that dragon and I can control that dragon, then I'll restore Death Mountain in a more permanent sense, and obviously that doesn't work.
I think what's inherently the issue with Volga is that he's hyper order, yet he wants to control what is essentially an expression of chaos.
Yeah, he wants to control something that's completely opposite of his nature, which that is what order that's what a tyrant does. That is the symbolism of a tyrant. And guess what? The Volvagians are known for their tyranny.
Is that why he wants to marry a tree, so that he can
Yes,
hyper order?
because a tree is the symbol of order. Rudo actually does have some ties to order because of the ice, but she is also connected to water, which is a lot more fluid. So yeah, there are symbolic connections between Saria and Volga, which is kind of funny.
I kind of like that kind of character. Well-intentioned, but the world, they're not able to see the complexity of it.
He's a letter of the law. He's basically Judge Dredd. That's what Volga's Judge Dredd. I'm the law.
It's like, like, the thing is with the Tetra, like, I understand where he's coming from, but it doesn't make sense. Like, in his mind, it does make sense, because, he has a certain way of seeing the world. But she's still functionally the princess, regardless of her heritage. The same with Styla, right? She could potentially be a very good monarch, regardless of her heritage, right?
Yeah.
But people are not always able to see the complexity, and they latch on to the axioms.
Yep,
and
the principles.
Yeah, and I guess that's Volga's biggest flaw, is that he's literally blind. He wants to control. He wants to control chaos, but he's blind to chaos.
Yep. That is his undoing. Someone's asking, will Saria and Volga have a kid so that we'll get a dragon tree person who's constantly on fire? I don't think they will have a child because no, I don't think they'll have a child. I think it's pretty obvious what Saria's fate is. She ends up becoming a Korok and kind of living on an island out in the Great Sea. Obviously, she ends up a widow. Poor Saria. She's also one of those characters who more intentionally is put through a lot of crap, but I feel like she deals with it better than Rudo, probably.
Yeah. I mean, she is the tree, so.
Yeah. I know. As people are pointing out in the chat, I know it's the I'm actually a 2,000-year-old deity that looks like a kid thing is a meme, but Saria is kind of old in Nephy canon. You know, the Deku Tree died and she started to physically age too, so she's not really a kid anymore. Mentally and physically, just throwing that out there. I mean, I purposely, I mean, she still looks really youthful, but...
Sounds like you'll have to remodel her again.
I'll remodel her again!
To, you know, show the passing of time.
Yeah, I mean, since the Deku Tree has died, she's had a bit of exposure to the world, so mentally she's not entirely kid anymore, and very literally, she's at least a century old. I think she's, 120 something?
Yeah.
So, and even then, we're talking about a medieval world where royals would regularly marry underage people. Like, it's a different world back then. I know in modernity that's messed up, and I'm not even saying I support it, but we're talking about a medieval society. Like,
obviously we can flesh
royals would marry very young for political reasons. Like, that's just the way it was then.
Obviously we can flesh out the timeline again. Like, Volga is still the youngest of the Rowan brothers, right? So you can flesh out the timeline. I haven't even really considered the age gap between them, and that's something that
Volga was a child during the Gerudo War, so he's probably around the same age as Link. Because he's probably a little older than Link, because he's probably about the age of Rudo, because I've already established that he was arranged to marry Rudo by Rudo's father when he was still young. They were arranged to marry each other.
So I imagine that there's quite an age gap between Volga and Tuft and Robred, right? I imagine there's like an actual pretty...
Tuft is probably in his 50s.
Yeah.
Which, if Styla is still, like, 16 or 17 or 18, then, yeah, Tuft, he was desperate to sire an heir, which is probably why he settled for an Ordanian, because he was getting old. He's like, man, I'm in my 50s, I don't have an heir yet. God, these stupid Arcadians, they're all big burly men. I'll wed an Ordanian.
And like, I think someone pointed out, I don't remember who, but, you know, Agatha is she is, you know, Styla's cousin.
Yeah.
And she's still much older than her, and that's because, like you said, Tuft didn't get an actual kid until later in his life.
Yeah, to add a bit of salt to Styla, which I actually kind of regret, because I feel really bad for Styla now, but Tuft and basically the Romes had kind of been living on the margins for, a few decades since they didn't get the throne. So Tuft obviously doesn't have an army, and basically his first source of an army is the Arcadians. So he basically promises Prince Facade that if he marries his daughter, or I think it's the other way around, Facade is like, okay, I will lend you the Arcadian armies if I can marry your daughter. So they arrange that marriage. Styla is actually interested in Facade, so that's like one of those happy arranged marriages. But they don't actually marry yet, but they're arranged to get married. But Facade is more interested in Tetra, so he's like, look, I'll turn my back on the Romes if I can, and I will side with you, Tetra, so that you can retake Hyrule, you can retake your throne. I'll lend you the Arcadian armies if you marry me. So for a little while there, Tetra is actually engaged to Facade, and Styla's plans completely blow up in her face because she loses like her entire army. That's actually what convinces Link to finally come out and be like, okay, I'm actually a Gustav. We can legally marry, so fuck this facade guy. I'm a Gustav. Let's get married and take over the throne. So much backstabbing. It's wonderful.
I mean, everything is going to shit, so I mean, he probably should come out and be like, okay.
I feel really bad for Styla because she's actually a character where it's like everything is going right and then it just all explodes one thing after the other in her face. All like
I think
it's like a rapid descent of failure.
I think what makes her ultimately such a tragic character is because she would do well, right?
Yeah.
If given the chance, she would probably be a very good, queen or whatever. And she probably would be pretty, ironically, probably be pretty popular with the common folk, right?
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big, and I also, if she's probably a very good politician. So I think it's kind of, I think that's the tragedy that but honestly it makes sense that the people of Hyrule are fucking themselves over again.
Yep. Which happens all throughout history, and it happens in Game of Thrones. It's just humans. We all suck.
Yeah.
If I can be negative on humanity for just a moment here, because I'm not
Honestly,
entirely negative on humans, but I'm going to be negative for a moment here.
Honestly, I think initially they shouldn't be too much hostilities when Teft dies, because Teft is an asshole. It would make sense for Styla to try to mediate the situation, right?
Yeah.
Because war is not favorable for any part, and she'd be like, I don't really want this war, but I do think I am the legitimate heir, and and they're still kin, right? That's an important thing to consider. They're still kin, and so avoiding conflict would be the best. Obviously,
Yeah.
it wouldn't go that way, but it would make sense for her to try to mediate the situation at least.
Yeah, Styla probably can't reconcile with Volga because Volga ends up killing her father, so that's probably why she won't. Well, I don't even think Volga would reconcile with her either, so that's kind of a hopeless situation with those two. Styla can't reconcile with Tetra because Tetra basically stole her future husbando from her, and then betrayed him for Link. So like Styla has personal beef with multiple enemies, and then Akazu is basically her only option left, and Akazu is the one who ends up exposing her and getting her putting her through her walk of shame in her poop suit and getting her killed. So it just all Akazu has no interest in reconciling with her because he's like, look, she has no army left. I have the law on my side because she's got an impure bloodline. I have the chance to completely destroy this competitor. So I'm gonna expose her, and then he exposes her, and Akazu is the one who basically puts the nail in the Rome coffin.
I actually got an idea. I'm not sure if I should talk about it.
Go ahead. Unless.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. I see a
so-
question I want to answer, but you put your thing through first.
Yeah. So what about if Styla tried to reconcile with Tetra, and then the facade thing happens?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
I'll think on that. I like that.
Because
Now that her father's dead,
Yeah.
and then she finds out that Facade betrayed her, and him and Tetra are getting married, and then that just crushes Styla. She's like, yes, that'd be great.
Because
I love it.
I do think it would make sense that she'd be kind of smart about it, and she would go to Tetra and be like, hey, this is kind of dumb, but I still think I'm the legitimate heir, but I'm not going to kill you or anything, right? You just renounce your claim, and we'll be cool, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously, Facade, conspires against her. That kind of just starts putting her,
Facade ruins it for everyone.
Yeah, but look at him. Obviously,
yeah. Well, just look at the guy.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, just look at him. Yeah, I think just that because again like any sensible person would mediate the situation in some way because it's not favorable for any party. So that I think at least one party would try to mediate,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't really work out because
Then Akazu ends up putting the final nail in the Styla coffin.
Can you
Basically,
imagine that?
what?
No, can you imagine that though? That you
Yep.
know,
It's like
initially,
one thing after another for Styla. Like everything's going so well, and then just one disaster right after the other until her death.
No, can you imagine though? Like, let's say, you know, for initially, you know, Stylist tries to mediate the situation. Tetra refuses, right? And she's like, "Okay, fuck you." And then Facade does the, you know, they besiege Snow Peak Manor, and you know, he eventually goes over there. And they show up to court when Styla is there. Can you imagine the face?
Yup.
And
And
Tetra's
it's
like,
even
"Yeah,
it's
no."
even funnier because Tetra and him don't end up getting married anyway. It was like
Yeah,
all
and then, you know,
pointless.
And Tetra is like, yeah, about that, you know, reconciliation.
Yep. And then yeah, and then that ultimately leads to I guess my version of Cersei's walk of shame, where Styla is her Ordanian heritage is exposed, and the people are all pissed off, and then that's courtesy of Akazu. So Akazu manages to win a lot of people to his favor for that, and he's like, "Look, I'm just exposing all these bastards left and right. All these, why don't you guys side with me? I'm the true king." And then that's how I'm gonna include the stupid poop suit in Nephy canon. It's basically she's forced to wear it and walk. It's her walk of shame, and that leads to her death in the streets of Hyrule. So Styla has a very sad and shameful end to her gamble to take the throne of Hyrule.
I mean, it's not really her gamble, actually.
Yeah, it was her father's.
Yeah,
It wasn't even hers.
she's just acting through her father's scheme.
I
or,
feel
like,
so bad for, like, this is a character I like. It's so funny. Like, I really should just like include characters I hate, because like all the characters I hate from Nintendo canon end up being like the best characters in Nephy canon. It's like Hylian and Styla are like two of the best characters in Nephy canon now, and they're both characters I absolutely loathe in Nintendo's games. It's really funny. I don't know, maybe it's just because like I have to actually try a lot harder to work with them, because like I don't know, but I find it funny. Like, but there was a question someone asked earlier about Kalatia. Will Kalatia's army participate in the War of Secession? And that is no, because Kalatia was basically, I mean, Kalatia does have a standing army, and they do have a monarchy. They have their own little kingdom. But Kalatia was basically established by a bunch of monks, and they're kind of like Switzerland, I guess, or they're like San Marino. They've always maintained neutrality, and they made an agreement with the Gustavs, like, we'll harbor your bloodline here if whenever you try to take back the throne, you leave us out of it, and we remain neutral. They don't want to get involved, so they do not directly get involved in this whole Hylian civil war. However, they get destroyed by Ganondorf, so we will see the Kalatian army in action, defending itself against Ganondorf, and then Kalatia gets destroyed by Ganondorf. So that I hope that does answer the question, I guess. But yeah.
Speaking of which, just to kind of clarify, because this is ages ago, but I remember when we initially talked about Kalatia. Did the Gustav loyalist also go into exile still? Is that still a thing? Like the other families that supported Gustav during the first civil war, did they also go into exile?
I'm sure survivors of them probably made their way to Kalatia when they.
Because I mean, at least it
not
was
I wouldn't
from
say
being
in
horrible.
I wouldn't say in like super significant numbers, because
No.
not the Goma, the Moblins wiped out a lot of them. I'm certain there were others that made their way to Kalatia. You know, they were probably some of the first people that married Gustav's children.
Yeah, I was like, it also would still prevent them from getting horribly inbred, right? If there were like a few families.
The Calations certainly have. I mean, Link's mother was Calatian, so his biological mother, and his stepmother is Calatian too. So that means Link is half Calatian, I guess.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. Um. I could probably honestly talk for a few more hours, but is it possible that we could maybe wrap this up and continue this on Friday? If
Sure.
you're
I don't
okay.
mind.
I would say tomorrow, but I actually have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Don't worry, I'm not sick with the coronavirus, but honestly, I could keep on talking, but I actually have to step out for a bit soon. But I'd be more than willing to continue this on Friday. Or maybe, and of course, like an idiot, I forgot to take notes. I guess I could just listen to this and mark the notes down later. I meant to take notes
Yeah.
through all of this, and I didn't take down any notes.
I mean, I tend to remember most most of what we talk about. So if there's something you
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess
just ask.
I'll look through the chat and maybe answer questions for like 15 minutes, and then
Yeah,
I'll probably head out.
Okay,
But I'll
so-
definitely continue this on Friday if you're
Yeah, we
available,
do.
because I have Friday
Yeah, we
off
do
too. I have like every
part-
day off.
Yeah. So we can do like a quick fire round of Q&A, and then we can finish part 2 on Friday. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, let's see what questions there are. What about Link's grandmother? Asks King of Spoons 64. It's established in the Fallen Sage that his grandmother had passed away. I think. Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was from Linear.
She lived in Lanayru. Link's mother, after his mother fled from Calatia with him, they ended up living with his grandmother for a time in Lanayru. And during that time, Link worked at Lon Lon. He basically shipped milk for them. That's how Link knows about Malon. My biggest regret is during the Gerudo Wars, I had Malon as an adult, which I don't know why I did that. Malon should have been a kid. So that's how Link knows Malon, is during I guess before the Gerudo Wars technically. He worked with her at Lon Lon. And then the Gerudo Wars ruined everything, so that's how he ended up with the Wizrobes. But right before the Gerudo Wars, he lived with his grandmother in Lanayru, and then she probably passed away sometime soon after that. So, Grandma Link is dead at this point. Let's see what other questions. Will the aura be usable for real, though? If there's a way it can be done, sure. I don't know how it could really be used at the moment, though. Ooh, what is Dark Link? Link's shadow. Yeah, Dark Link has been suspiciously absent from Nephy canon, but no, he's in the back of my head. He's a shadow in my mind. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see Dark Link eventually. I've actually posted Dark Link stuff. It's floating around online, so that might give some hints. Someone said keep talking until Friday instead of on Friday. I don't think I could go on for 48 hours, but I could probably talk for like 2 more hours. But I mean, we're at the 2.5 hour mark anyway, so I feel like 3 hours is usually a good length for each of these sessions. But since I don't know, since we're probably going to go on for a bit on Friday, I'll cut it short a little bit before 3 hours. Yeah, you know what? I'll probably just cut it short now. I'm not seeing too many questions. We'll do it. We'll do it. Oh, you can ask one question. All right.
Okay. I'll bring it out there because it's something I actually wanted to ask you for a while, but I just constantly forget.
What?
Could you please redesign Mifa at some point in your own style?
Redesign her? What about her design do you not like?
More similar to the Sora that you made previously, because I think it would be nicer.
I'll consider it. I personally am satisfied with her design.
I'll buy your I'll buy you nuggets.
I'll think about it. I'll think about redesigning Mifa then.
I think it's because mainly because, well, the design she has inspired from Breath of the Wild is okay in a vacuum. I think that your Sora are better and more suited for your world.
All right, I'll think about it. I might
Like
keep
if you
her head
could,
fin designs the same way
yeah,
though, because they're a little
yeah,
bit
yeah,
different. Really,
yeah.
she honestly she is really similar to the Twilight Princess Zora. She just has a bigger forehead,
Yeah,
which I actually shrunk a little bit. And one thing I hate about the Zora designs from Breath of the Wild is they have a very long like torso and like tiny legs.
Yeah.
I got rid of that for her. She has a normal sized her proportions for her chest and her waist and her abdomen. They're all like the normal Zoras. They're not long.
I think mainly the problem for me personally is her nose.
Her nose.
Yeah,
All right,
in relation
well,
to her eyes.
I'll think about it. I'll think about it. And we'll talk about it again on Friday.
If it's a hurdle, I'll buy nuggets.
I'm not opposed to the idea. I personally am satisfied with her current design. However, one Zora I've been wanting to redesign for ages is actually Rawless. I hate his current design.
You cut out. Could you?
Oh, I was saying one Zora design I've hated for a long time that I actually do want to redesign is Rawless.
Hello?
Hello?
You cut out again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, right before I go, a Zora that I've been wanting to actually redesign that I've hated for a long time is Rawless.
Ah.
I really don't like the way he looks. I've wanted to redesign him for a while.
When he's older, or
yeah, when he's older, not when he's a kid. When he's a kid, I couldn't care any less. It's when he's older. I don't like his design. So I'll probably You're like, no, he's fine. Redesign me fine.
I just curious as to why you.
He just looks kind of doofy to me, I guess. He doesn't look very. I don't know. He looks. I don't know. I just don't like it.
Too much like Rallis as a kid.
I guess, yeah. I honestly, I'm probably not gonna do this, but I even considered giving him hair, which Zora don't normally have. I mean, in Nephy canon, they kind of have like dolphins and whales. They have like little stubby hairs all over their bodies, but they don't actually have like humans, like facial hair or hair coming out from. I was considering that for him, but I probably won't go through with that because it would set him too much apart, I think, from. And honestly, he doesn't. In his parents, there's nothing in his heritage that really would lend him having hair.
Yeah, I guess maybe if you want to move away from a bit from the child design, just kind of chisel his features a bit.
Yeah.
Make him a bit sharper, I guess.
I'll think about it. I might give him more beefier armor, maybe. I don't know.
I do like armor.
Yeah. I'm fine with his sword, though. And by sword, I mean the weapon he uses, not another sword.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's the best note I could end on for today.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed that discussion. Deox and I will return on Friday, and we'll probably do a part 2, because we didn't even get like halfway through the Civil War. Nope. We've barely talked about Impa. What else did we not talk about? I barely talked about Akazu.
Yeah.
Although he's honestly, the one I've least conceptualized in my mind. As far as
there's probably more stuff.
Yeah. All the stuff like that ties Ganondorf to it, because Ganondorf is of course going to be tied to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll be back on Friday. Really quick though, is there going to be any Labyrinth contents made? All the Labyrinth stuff takes place before the Hylian Civil War. I'm not changing any of the Labyrinth stuff. I'm pretty satisfied with how that campaign is going to go.
Someone asked, actually, kind of important, I guess. When do you imagine you want to start on Friday, so people have like
I'm going to try and start noon, but because I haven't been... My schedule's been, because I've been kind of in quarantine, my sleeping schedule has become kind of a disaster again, so I've been sleeping past noon. I'm going to try and start at noon, though. I actually wanted to start at noon today, but it didn't work out. So it'll be sometime between noon and 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Sometime between then on Friday. I'll try and do it earlier for all you Europeans.
That will be. I'm a bit tired, so around 10 European time, Central European time, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was fun. So
Yes.
thank you guys for listening. We'll be back on Friday.
See you then.
And we'll end the stream now.